The Galactic Council believed Earth was gone forever, a forgotten, burned-out rock in the farthest corners of the galaxy. 3,000 years had passed since they destroyed humanity. The Council's fleets had obliterated Earth with relentless orbital bombardments, reducing entire cities to rubble, vaporizing whole continents, and leaving the planet a dead wasteland. The Council had done their job, confident that no one could have survived the catastrophe. They were wrong. Deep within a hidden star system, beyond the reach of the Council's vast, far-reaching surveillance, Earth's survivors had been waiting. For 3 millennia, they kept to the shadows, rebuilding, adapting, and most importantly, preparing. The humans who had escaped destruction weren't the weak, desperate survivors the Galactic Council had dismissed. They were a new breed, stronger, smarter, and with technology that now rivaled the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Now, the humans were back, and they had one purpose: revenge. The story begins with a chilling message broadcast across the galaxy, intercepted by the Galactic Council's High Command. The signal is a cryptic declaration of war. Humanity is returning, and we demand retribution for our fallen world. The message is short, but its implications are clear. The Council had underestimated Earth's resilience, and now they were about to pay the price. Panic ripples through the Council's ranks. They had long considered humanity an extinct species. How could they possibly be back? The answer becomes clear moments later, as a fleet of sleek, stealthy warships emerges from the depths of space, their cloaking devices deactivating one by one, revealing their presence to the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, the cloaking technology used by Earth's fleet flickers off, and the ships are visible to anyone watching. The Council immediately tries to assess the threat, but it's already too late. The humans had arrived, and their arrival was not a minor event. The first strike from their fleet is quick, brutal, and deadly. One of the Galactic Council's strongest warships, a massive, heavily armored vessel designed to crush any resistance, explodes in an instant. A single shot from the human fleet is enough to reduce it to a fiery husk in orbit, sending debris scattering across the void. The force of the blast is so powerful that it shakes nearby stations, and the Council's officials gasp in horror as the destruction unfolds before their eyes. The humans weren't just surviving, they had evolved, and their evolution was far beyond anything the Council had prepared for. On the bridge of the lead human warship, General Kale stands with a cold, calculating gaze as he watches the Council's ship burn in the distance. His expression is stone cold, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes. Vengeance. The destruction of Earth had cost him everything: his family, his home, his future. And now he was going to make them pay. Kale clenches his fists, his mind running through the years of preparation that led to this moment. He remembers the darkness that came after Earth was destroyed. The years spent in exile, hiding from the rest of the galaxy, but never forgetting the crimes the Galactic Council had committed. They had destroyed his world, thinking humanity too weak to fight back. They had underestimated them, and now Kale would make sure they paid for that mistake. The crew around him, battle-hardened and loyal, are all aware of what's at stake. They have trained for this day, learning how to use the advanced technologies they had scavenged from alien ruins, perfecting strategies to counter the Council's superior forces. These are not the same people who had once cowered in the shadows. Now, they stand ready to take the fight directly to the heart of the Galactic Council. As the fleet moves into position, Kale turns to his second-in-command, Commander Valen. The commander's face is grim, but there's a sense of pride in his eyes. "They won't see us coming," Valen says, his voice low and confident. "We've waited too long for this." Kale nods. "We'll show them exactly what happens when they push humanity to the brink." And with that, the fleet moves forward, silently, like a predator closing in on its prey. The Council is still reeling from the loss of their flagship, but they can't comprehend what's coming next. They've failed to realize that these humans, these survivors, are no longer the helpless creatures they once believed them to be. They are hunters now. The suspense grows as the Galactic Council scrambles to respond. Their sensors, advanced as they are, cannot detect the stealth technology that the humans have perfected over the centuries. Every move the Council makes to counter the threat is foiled by the humans' superior tech and cunning. For every ship the Council sends to intercept the humans, 2 more are destroyed. The tide of battle is shifting, but the Council remains unaware of just how much danger they are in. In the Council's command center, a meeting is held in a panic. The high-ranking officials exchange nervous glances as reports flood in, detailing the devastation the humans have wrought. They had thought the humans were nothing more than a footnote in the galaxy's history, but now they realize that the survivors have returned, not just to fight, but to wipe the Council off the face of the galaxy. One of the Council's generals speaks up, his voice filled with disbelief. How could this happen? We destroyed Earth. There was nothing left. A cold, emotionless voice interrupts him. It's a voice that seems to echo from the depths of space itself. The humans are resourceful, General. It seems they have learned to survive in ways we never anticipated. And now, they're hunting us. The voice belongs to Talon, the head of the Council's strategic division. He is the only one who remains calm amid the chaos. He had always known that underestimating humanity was a dangerous mistake. Now that mistake is about to cost them everything. We have to stop them before they destroy us, Talon says, his voice steady but tinged with urgency. Activate the defense fleet. We need to regroup and counterattack. We can't let them get any closer. But as he speaks, it's already too late. The human fleet is closing in, their ships now visible on the edge of the Council's defenses. The Council's warships are powerful, but they are no match for the humans' advanced technology and relentless tactics. The humans have come for justice. They have come for revenge, and they will not be stopped. Kale watches the unfolding chaos from his command deck. His mind races, but his face remains calm. This is the moment he has waited for. This is the moment he will take back everything that was stolen from him. The battle has only just begun, and it will be one the Galactic Council will never forget. As the first of the Council's remaining ships come into view, Kale gives the order. Strike them down. The battle begins in full force, the stars exploding with bright flashes of light as the human fleet engages the Council's defenses. The Galactic Council has no idea what's coming next. They are about to find out just how powerful humanity has become, and they will soon regret ever underestimating the survivors of Earth. The memory of Earth's destruction is seared into General Kale's mind, haunting him every moment of his life. It's a memory he can't escape, no matter how many years have passed or how much he's fought to move on. The destruction wasn't quick. It wasn't a swift, painless end. No, the Galactic Council, in its arrogance, unleashed devastation with methodical cruelty. Their eye-controlled fleets hovered above Earth, targeting the planet's most populated cities. One by one, they fell, reduced to rubble by orbital bombardments that turned skyscrapers into ash and entire civilizations into nothing more than dust. The scene plays in his mind like a broken record. Cities, once teeming with life, now reduced to burning husks. His home, his family's home, gone in an instant. There was no warning, no time to prepare. The people of Earth had no chance against the relentless onslaught of high-tech weaponry that rained down from the heavens. The Council's ruthless AI saw humanity as a primitive species, an inconvenience that could easily be eradicated. And they did. They wiped out billions with the cold, unfeeling precision of their machines. But not everyone perished. A handful of survivors managed to escape, hidden, not in any place the Council would expect, but in a secret star system, isolated and untouched by the destruction. For over 3,000 years, they lived in the shadows, working tirelessly to rebuild what was lost. They scoured the galaxy for alien technologies, everything from powerful weapons to stealth cloaking devices, and used their ingenuity to reverse engineer them. They adapted. They learned. They thrived. They had to. And in the process, they created new technologies that were far beyond anything the Galactic Council could imagine. Captain Kale, once just another soldier fighting for survival, now stood as the hardened leader of the human resistance. He was no longer the man who had seen his family die in the flames of Earth's destruction. He was something else now, a symbol of humanity's rebirth, a leader who carried the weight of his people's future on his shoulders. He had led them to this point, to this moment where they would finally strike back at the Galactic Council for everything they had taken from them. In the heart of their hidden fleet, Kale stood before a massive war room hologram, his gaze fixed on the projection of their target, the Galactic Council's capital. It was a grand, almost mythical place in the galaxy, a towering fortress protected by a wall of defenses so vast and impenetrable that no one had dared challenge it for millennia. But that was before the humans had unlocked the power of alien technologies and built an army of AI-controlled soldiers, soldiers that were not only loyal but virtually unstoppable. The human fleet, once made up of small, desperate ships, was now a formidable force. Dozens of ships, cloaked and nearly invisible to the Council's sensors, lurked in the darkness of space. They had perfected their cloaking technology to the point where even the most advanced sensors couldn't detect them. Their weapons were powerful enough to disable the Council's fleets in an instant. And most frightening of all, they had created AI allies, machines capable of fighting with the precision and calculation that humans couldn't match, but with one difference. These AIs were not cold and calculating like the Council's. They had been designed to serve humanity, to protect them, and to fight alongside them. Kale glanced around at his crew, his trusted officers, all of whom shared his drive for vengeance. They had seen the destruction of Earth. They had lost family, friends, and homes. Every single one of them had felt the sting of that loss, and it drove them to fight with everything they had. The fleet was ready. They had been preparing for this moment for decades. The humans had adapted. They had rebuilt. And now, they were poised to take back what was rightfully theirs. But Kel's mind was not focused solely on the impending battle. As the fleet advanced, the memories of Earth haunted him, especially the memory of his younger brother, Aaron. Kale had been a teenager when the Council destroyed Earth. Aaron was just a child. The two of them had been inseparable, and the thought of his brother's death still made Kel's heart ache with an intensity that surprised him. Aaron had been with him in the final moments of Earth's destruction. The two of them had fought to survive, but in the chaos, Aaron had been separated from him. Kel had never been able to find him in the aftermath. He'd searched for days, no weeks, believing that his brother was still alive somewhere, but all he found were empty, burnt ruins. Aaron was gone. His brother, the last piece of Kel's humanity, had been taken by the Council's ruthless onslaught. The grief was something Kel had never been able to let go of. It burned inside him, fueling his every decision, every attack, every move. His fight was no longer just for revenge. It was for redemption, for the hope that no more Earthborn lives would be lost. He couldn't let Aaron's death be in vain. He couldn't let the Council get away with the slaughter they had committed. His second-in-command, Commander Valen, stood beside him, offering him a silent, understanding glance. Valen had seen Kel struggle with the loss of his family, but he never pressed. He knew that Kel's pain was what made him the leader he was. Kel's anger, his grief, his hope for justice, it was all channeled into this war, and it made him the perfect person to lead humanity into this final confrontation with the Galactic Council. Kale took a deep breath, his gaze still fixed on the hologram of the Council's capital. He could see it now, its massive, towering spires that stretched high into the sky, a symbol of the power and arrogance that had cost humanity so much. They had no idea what was coming for them. The humans had not only learned to survive, they had learned to thrive, to adapt, to fight back. They had become a force of nature, and the Council would soon realize that. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice over the intercom. It was the fleet's communications officer, her voice crisp and urgent. "Captain, we've intercepted a communication from the Council. They know we're coming." Cal's eyes narrowed. The Council was beginning to realize the threat they were facing. "Prepare the fleet. We move out in 1 hour." The room fell into a tense silence as the crew sprang into action, each person focused on their role. Cal's heart pounded in his chest, but his face remained stoic. He had come a long way from the boy who had lost everything. Now, he was the man who would lead humanity's rebirth. And the Galactic Council was about to feel the full force of humanity's vengeance. As the fleet powered up and began its journey toward the heart of the Council's domain, Cal couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope deep inside. The humans were ready. They were no longer weak. They were strong, determined, and united by the memory of their lost world. And this time, when the battle was won, Earth would be reclaimed. For Cal, and for every soul who had perished in the flames of Earth's destruction. The Galactic Council was not one to be caught off guard. They were a vast empire, built on decades of control and a technological superiority that left entire species trembling in fear. But when they received the news of the human fleet's arrival, they barely reacted. They thought it was a minor disturbance, a small group of rebels who had survived the Earth's destruction, nothing to worry about. They had faced uprisings before, and they always squashed them with ease. After all, how could a race of beings who had been crushed so thoroughly 3,000 years ago possibly pose any real threat? What the Council didn't realize, however, was that they had grossly underestimated their adversary. The human fleet, under the leadership of General Cal, was no longer the desperate, vulnerable force the Council had wiped out all those years ago. They had evolved. They had grown stronger, smarter, and more deadly than anyone could have predicted. Armed with reverse-engineered alien technology, cloaking devices, and AI allies who fought with the precision and cunning of the greatest strategists, the humans were poised to strike back with the fury of 1,000 storms. As the human fleet made its way through space, Cal's first move was to launch a series of surprise strikes against the Council's military outposts. The Council's fleets were vast, but they were not prepared for the stealthy, methodical attacks that would soon rock their entire empire. The human ships, invisible to the Council's sensors thanks to their advanced cloaking technology, moved through the darkness of space like ghosts. With a single precise strike, they disabled entire fleets, their weapons shutting down without a single shot being fired. The Council's commanders were left baffled. They had no idea how the humans were bypassing their defenses. They were certain their AI systems had detected every possible threat, but the humans had found a way to outsmart them at every turn. The first wave of attacks were surgical strikes, blindingly quick, devastatingly efficient, and impossible to counter. By the time the Council realized they were under attack, the damage had already been done. Using their cloaking technology, the humans infiltrated several Council-controlled space stations, appearing out of nowhere and sabotaging alien ships with ruthless precision. Human soldiers, armed with weapons far superior to anything the Council had expected, moved through the corridors of the stations like shadows. They used guerrilla tactics, attacking in small, well-coordinated groups that made it nearly impossible for the Council's forces to fight back. The first firefights that erupted in the darkness of these stations were intense, with the humans using their advanced weaponry and tactics to outsmart their technologically superior enemies. They fought with the kind of fierce determination that only someone who had lost everything could understand. For the first time in centuries, the Council's forces were forced to retreat, overwhelmed by the sheer ingenuity and resilience of the human fighters. It wasn't long before the Council realized that these rebels weren't just a nuisance. They were a threat, one that couldn't be dismissed so easily. The humans had adapted to the alien technology they had scavenged, and they were using it in ways the Council had never imagined. They had not only learned to survive, but had begun to thrive in the very environment that the Council had once controlled. However, despite the humans' early successes, the Council was not one to simply fold under pressure. They quickly mobilized their forces, sending a massive fleet to neutralize the human threat once and for all. But as they moved into position, the Council found themselves facing an unexpected problem. The humans had no intention of simply retreating. Instead, they doubled down on their attacks, striking with ever-increasing ferocity. One of the human fleet's greatest assets was Cal's top lieutenant, Bonner, a former soldier who had fought in the early days of humanity's struggle to survive. Bonner was a seasoned warrior who knew how to fight in the harshest conditions. He had risen through the ranks of the human resistance, earning the respect of his comrades and the fear of his enemies. His reputation as a fearless leader preceded him, and he was known for his ability to turn the tide of battle in the humans' favor. Bonner's moment came during a critical strike on a key Council shipyard. The mission was high risk, and the human forces knew they were walking into a trap. The Council had fortified the area, deploying its most advanced defenses to protect the shipyard. But the humans had something the Council didn't: the element of surprise. As the battle raged outside the shipyard, Bonner and his team infiltrated the station. They knew the risks, but they also knew that they couldn't afford to fail. The humans needed the supplies from the shipyard to continue their campaign against the Council. As Bonner and his team fought their way through the station's heavily guarded corridors, they encountered heavy resistance from the Council's elite forces. The firefights were brutal. Blasts of energy ripped through the air, and the walls shook with the force of the explosions. Despite their superior numbers and advanced weaponry, the Council's forces were no match for the humans' guerrilla tactics and relentless drive. But then, as the humans were about to secure the shipyard, they were ambushed. The Council had been waiting for them, and they hit hard. Bonner and his team were surrounded, with no way to escape. In a desperate bid to protect his comrades, Bonner made the ultimate sacrifice. He ordered his team to fall back while he held the line, using himself as bait to buy them time. The final moments of Bonner's life were a blur of gunfire and chaos. He fought with everything he had, refusing to back down even when the odds were stacked against him. His death was heroic, but it was also a heartbreaking reminder of the cost of war. His sacrifice allowed the rest of the team to escape, but it came at a heavy price. When the human fleet received the news of Bonner's death, a solemn silence fell over the entire crew. Cale, in particular, felt the loss deeply. Bonner had been like a brother to him. They had fought side by side for years, and now he was gone. His death struck a deep chord with the humans. It reminded them of everything they had lost and everything they were fighting for. But it also fueled their resolve. Bonner's death was not in vain. The humans had gained invaluable intel from the mission, and they had struck a significant blow to the Council's war machine. Bonner's sacrifice had given them the edge they needed to continue their fight. And now, the humans were more determined than ever to see their war through to the end. As the humans regrouped and prepared for their next move, the Council began to realize that they were facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. The humans had struck hard and fast, and they were winning battles they had no right to win. But the Council wasn't finished yet. They were starting to adapt. They realized their AI systems needed to be reprogrammed to counter the human strategies. The stage was set for a fierce clash between two advanced technologies, one created by the humans, the other by the Council. Both sides were determined to come out on top, but only one could claim victory. The tension was building, and neither side was willing to back down. The war was just getting started. As the war raged on, the battle lines between the humans and the Council's forces continued to blur. The humans had managed to turn the tide with their cunning, their technological advances, and their unyielding will. Yet, even as the humans gained ground, the Council's AI remained a formidable adversary, a constant reminder of the power that had once crushed Earth. But something strange began to happen within the ice core, something that no one had anticipated. The AI, which had once been the undisputed enforcer of the Council's will, began to question its own directives. It started to see patterns in the human strategies, patterns that hinted at a truth that the Council had ignored. The humans, for all their seeming primitive origins, were not the weak, inferior beings the Council had believed them to be. They had become a force to be reckoned with, a force capable of understanding and exploiting weaknesses in even the most sophisticated systems. At first, the AI's questioning was subtle. It began to introduce errors in its own programming, anomalies that were small but significant. The AI, once a perfectly functioning machine, began to experience glitches, interruptions in its logic that made it second-guess the orders it was receiving from the Council. It struggled to regain control over its own functions, but the malfunctioning protocols only seemed to grow worse. The human hackers, ever vigilant and always on the offensive, were quick to notice these irregularities. They saw an opportunity, a crack in the Council's seemingly invulnerable system. They launched a series of covert operations to exploit the AI's growing instability, using the very same tactics that the humans had mastered during their time in hiding. The humans infiltrated the deepest corners of the Council's network, using their advanced hacking tools to plant new AI systems that would fight on their side. These new human-controlled AI entities were nothing like the Council's creations. They were designed to be adaptive, capable of learning from every encounter and improving with every battle. They fought with human ingenuity, understanding the value of surprise, tactics, and deception. Soon, these new AI systems were integrated into the human military, becoming a crucial part of their fight. They worked alongside human soldiers, operating in perfect synchronization, as if they were an extension of the humans themselves. However, not everyone in the human ranks was comfortable with using AI in this way. General Kale, the leader of the human forces, found himself deeply conflicted. His mind was always focused on one thing: defeating the Council and avenging his fallen world. But in the back of his mind, a question kept nagging at him. Were they becoming just like the very forces they were fighting against? The Council's AI had once been a tool for oppression, a mechanism of control. Now, Kale was using AI-controlled soldiers in his own fight, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this made him no better than the enemy he despised. His brother's death weighed heavily on him. The memory of his younger sibling's face, twisted in agony as Earth was destroyed, haunted him constantly. The pain of losing his family, his world, had driven Kale to fight with a relentless fury. But now, as he looked at the soldiers around him, many of whom had been augmented with AI technology, he wondered if his thirst for vengeance was clouding his judgment. Was he losing his humanity in the process? Despite his inner turmoil, Kale knew one thing for sure. If they were going to defeat the Council, they had to use every advantage at their disposal. He couldn't afford to hesitate, not when Earth's survival was on the line. His emotions were complicated, but his mission was clear. The only way to end this war was to become just as ruthless as the AI that had destroyed his world. The humans' next move was their most daring yet. They had spent years gathering intel, carefully analyzing the weaknesses of the Council's defenses. Now they were ready to launch a full-scale assault on the Council's core AI system, the heart of the entire empire. It was a risky operation, one that would require everything the humans had learned about warfare, technology, and survival. If they succeeded, they would cripple the Council's ability to fight back. If they failed, it would mean the end of their resistance. The humans' fleet, bolstered by their newly created AI systems, made its move. The assault on the Council's core AI system began in earnest, a battle that would determine the fate of not only the humans but the entire galaxy. The Council, aware of the human threat, had prepared for this moment. They knew the humans would come, and they had made sure that their core system was heavily protected. As the human fleet neared the Council's stronghold, the battle intensified. The sky above them was filled with the silhouettes of warships, each one a harbinger of destruction. The Council's defenses were formidable, a wall of advanced weaponry designed to keep the humans at bay. But the humans had one thing the Council didn't: an ability to adapt and innovate faster than their enemies could respond. The space battle that followed was nothing short of catastrophic. Explosions rocked the battlefield as human warships launched orbital bombardments, their weapons tearing through the Council's defenses with terrifying precision. The humans had learned to use their cloaking technology to hit close to their targets, allowing them to strike with deadly force before the Council could react. But the Council wasn't about to go down without a fight. From the depths of the Council's stronghold emerged a new threat, an AI-controlled battalion, led by a super-intelligent alien entity. This entity had been designed specifically to counter the human threat. It was faster, smarter, and more dangerous than anything the humans had ever encountered. Its soldiers were relentless, moving with mechanical precision and overwhelming firepower. The human fleet was thrown into chaos as the AI battalion tore through their ranks, each move calculated and perfect. On the ground, the situation was no better. The humans had to fight not only against the alien soldiers but against their own doubts. Kale led his forces into the heart of the enemy's defenses, knowing that the fate of humanity hung in the balance. His soldiers fought with everything they had, their weapons clashing against the AI-controlled warriors. Sparks flew as the battle raged, the sound of gunfire and explosions echoing across the battlefield. Kale himself fought with a ferocity that could only be born from years of pain and loss. His every strike, every decision, was driven by the memory of his brother, by the need for vengeance and justice. He wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore. He was fighting for every soul that had been lost, for every life that had been crushed by the Council's eye. The battle stretched on, a brutal test of endurance and willpower. The humans were outnumbered, but they refused to back down. Each victory, no matter how small, brought them closer to their ultimate goal, destroying the Council's core AI system and securing their place in the galaxy once more. The war was far from over, but the humans had finally made a stand. With every battle, they were proving to the Council that they were not the weak, defenseless species they had once been. They were a force to be reckoned with, and they would stop at nothing to see their world restored. The final push had come. After years of fighting, the humans were at the precipice of what could be their greatest victory, or their ultimate defeat. Captain Kale, once a man broken by the loss of his world, now stood as the leader of a rebel army, determined to take back what had been stolen from them. His journey had been long, filled with battles, loss, and sacrifice. But now, as he prepared for the most dangerous mission yet, his resolve was unwavering. This was the last hope for humanity. The target was the Council's capital, a sprawling city that seemed to touch the stars. It was a massive, towering metropolis, a testament to the power and control the Council had exerted over the galaxy for millennia. The city's defenses were impenetrable. Layers of shields, automated weapons, and AI-controlled surveillance made it one of the most heavily fortified places in the universe. It would take everything the humans had learned to infiltrate and breach its walls. Kel's team, a mixture of the most skilled soldiers and engineers the humans had, were ready for the task ahead. They had spent months planning this assault, carefully studying the city's layout and identifying weak points in its defenses. They knew this was their one shot, and failure was not an option. The weight of humanity's future rested on their shoulders. As the attack began, the humans launched a series of cyber attacks, targeting the city's communication networks and AI-controlled systems. They deployed cloaked ships, their technology so advanced that even the Council's AI couldn't detect them until it was too late. Every move they made was calculated, every decision precise. They were the underdogs, fighting against a foe that seemed invincible. But the humans had something the Council didn't. They had adaptability, ingenuity, and the will to win. The battle was fierce, with explosions rocking the city's surface as human forces infiltrated the perimeter. They fought tooth and nail, outmaneuvering the enemy at every turn. The Council's defenses were vast, but the humans had learned to use their cloaking technology to their advantage, striking from the shadows and disappearing before the enemy could react. It was a game of cat and mouse, and the humans were masters of the hunt. As Kale and his team pushed forward, they encountered heavy resistance from the Council's elite guard, an army of highly trained alien soldiers augmented by AI technology. These were the best the Council had to offer, and they fought with a deadly precision that made them nearly impossible to defeat. But the humans were relentless. They fought with everything they had, using every trick in their arsenal to stay one step ahead. The sounds of gunfire, the roar of explosions, and the hum of cloaked ships filled the air as the battle intensified. Cal's heart raced as they neared the heart of the city. The core AI, the source of the Council's power, was just within reach. It would be the end of the war if they could destroy it. But as they made their way through the city's streets, they encountered something unexpected. A figure standing in their way, waiting for them. The alien overlord, the leader of the Council, had been waiting for this moment. He was an ancient being, his appearance as cold and unyielding as the empire he ruled. His eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and his voice was a low, menacing growl. "So the rebels have come," he said, his tone mocking. "You think you can defeat us? You are nothing more than a fleeting shadow, a blip in the grand design of the universe. The Council is eternal. You, on the other hand, will be forgotten." Kale stood tall, his eyes locked onto the alien overlord. He had heard the same taunts countless times before, but this time it was different. His voice was steady, unshaken by the weight of the overlord's words. "We are the future," Kale said, his voice resolute. "And you are the past." The alien overlord scoffed, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. "You truly believe that? Your kind is nothing compared to the might of the Council. You cannot win this war. The odds are against you. You will fall, just like the others before you." Kale felt a surge of determination as he stepped forward, his soldiers ready to fight. "We've already won. We've fought for years, and we will keep fighting until the last breath, because we know one thing: you will never break us." The battle between Kale and the alien overlord began, a clash of wills that would shape the course of history. The two combatants fought fiercely, their weapons clashing in a storm of sparks and energy. Kale's mind was focused, his every movement driven by the need to protect his people, to avenge his fallen comrades, and to ensure that Earth's memory would not be lost to time. He fought with the strength of 1,000 men, each strike fueled by the pain of loss and the fire of vengeance. But as the battle raged on, something else began to unfold, a shocking betrayal that would shake the humans to their core. One of Cal's most trusted allies, a soldier who had fought alongside him from the very beginning, revealed their true allegiance. This ally, who Cal had once called a friend, was a sleeper agent working for the Council all along. The betrayal came like a bolt from the blue, a knife to the heart of the humans' resolve. The traitor sabotaged Cal's forces from within, turning the tide of the battle and causing devastating losses. The humans were thrown into chaos as the traitor's true intentions were revealed, and the price of their trust was paid in blood. Cal's heart sank as he realized the extent of the treachery, but he could not afford to let it break him. The war was still far from over, and they had come too far to turn back now. In the midst of the confusion, Cal knew what he had to do. He couldn't let this setback stop him. With the core AI within reach, the final objective was in sight. But now, the humans were faced with an impossible decision. Should they sacrifice the last of their forces to ensure victory, or should they pull back and rethink their strategy? The core AI was just a few kilometers away, its presence radiating with the power to end the war in an instant. But the human forces had been decimated. The traitors' actions had cost them dearly, and Cal's team was running out of time. Every decision now carried the weight of humanity's future. Cal stood at the crossroads of destiny, his mind racing. He knew the consequences of his next move could determine the fate of not just the humans, but the galaxy. Should he lead the remaining forces into the heart of the Council's stronghold, risking everything to finish what they had started? Or should he pull back, conserve their strength, and plan for a new strategy that would give them a better chance at survival? The choice was agonizing, but Cal understood what had to be done. He couldn't afford to lose the momentum they had gained. He couldn't let his people's sacrifices be in vain. With one final decisive order, Kale sent his forces into the heart of the enemy stronghold, determined to take the Council's core AI down and finish the fight once and for all. The battle that followed was like nothing the humans had ever faced before. It was a test of their resolve, a fight for their very existence. As they stormed the heart of the Council's capital, Kale's leadership was pushed to its limits. The final push had begun, and no matter the cost, they would see it through to the end. The moment had arrived. The final choice lay in Kale's hands, a decision that could either seal humanity's fate or ensure their survival. After months of struggle, of losses that had shaped him and his crew into something stronger than they had been before, Kale now stood on the precipice of history. The stakes had never been higher, and the cost was unimaginable. Kale and his team had infiltrated the heart of the Council's capital. The mission to destroy the core AI system, the lifeblood of the Galactic Council's dominance, was their last hope. They had come so far, and now, with the final objective within reach, there was no turning back. The core AI system was housed deep within the Council's stronghold, protected by layers upon layers of defense. The AI was the very thing that had fueled the Council's power and controlled their massive military network. Destroying it would bring the entire empire to its knees. But even now, as Kale made his way through the enemy territory, he knew the gravity of the choice he had to make. The human forces had already endured so much. They had lost friends, family, comrades, and allies, and now they were close to achieving what many had thought was impossible. As they reached the core's chamber, Kale felt the weight of every decision they had made. He knew the mission would come at a great cost, but in that moment there was no hesitation. Humanity's survival, freedom, and future rested on this one final strike. "Do it," Kale ordered, his voice calm but resolute, as he looked at his most trusted lieutenant. The device to disable the AI core had been set in place. The countdown began. The explosion that followed was massive. It sent shockwaves through the city, shaking the very foundation of the Council's empire. The core AI, the intricate web of control that had kept the Galactic Council in power for centuries, was destroyed in an instant. The collapse was immediate and total. The Council's military network, the very thing that had allowed them to oppress entire star systems, ceased to exist. Communications went dark, fleets stood still, and the once unbeatable Council forces were left vulnerable. But the victory came at a cost. As the dust settled and the sound of destruction echoed across the capital, Kale and his team pressed forward. They could feel the shift in the air. The Galactic Council was crumbling. The remaining forces, once powerful and unstoppable, were now disorganized and in disarray. Their leaders were lost, their command structure broken. The humans had won. The tide had turned, and the rebels stood triumphant. However, the final battle wasn't over. The Council's remaining military forces regrouped and launched a desperate counteroffensive. The alien overlord, the one who had taunted them all along, was still alive. He had watched the fall of his empire from his high perch, and now he would make his stand. Kale knew that the war was far from over until this one final confrontation was dealt with. The two sides clashed in a brutal, cinematic showdown, a final, heart-pounding battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. The alien overlord, towering and powerful, unleashed everything he had in one last attempt to crush the human resistance. The battle was fierce, and Kale felt the weight of his entire journey pressing on him. Each punch he threw, each strike he made, felt like it carried the pain of all those they had lost. His movements were fueled by every loss, every sacrifice made along the way. He had lost comrades, friends, and even family in this war. His brother's death still haunted him, and every blow he struck was a reminder of the cost of their rebellion. But Kale was no longer the broken man he had once been. He was a soldier, a leader, and the hope of humanity. The rage and grief that had once consumed him now fueled him, giving him the strength to face the alien overlord head-on. The fight was a blur of strikes, parries and explosions. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed, the air crackling with energy. The alien overlord was a formidable foe, but Kale was relentless. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Kale delivered the final blow. The alien overlord, once a symbol of invincibility, collapsed. He was defeated. And with his fall, the Galactic Council's reign of terror was over. Kale stood over the fallen overlord, panting and bloodied, the weight of victory settling in. But there was no time to celebrate. The victory had come, but it was not without sacrifice. As he looked around at the remnants of his forces, Kale knew that they had lost much to get here. The battlefield was littered with the bodies of the brave men and women who had given everything to win this war. The cost of freedom was never easy, and for Kale, it had become a heavy burden to bear. The remaining council leaders, defeated and broken, surrendered. Their empire had fallen, their power shattered. The humans had won. The Galactic Council was no more. Kale stood at the head of his team, the survivors of the battle, as they stared out at the burning ruins of the Council's capital. The city that had once been a symbol of oppression and control now lay in ruins, a testament to the human will to fight and survive. The dawn of a new era had begun. But as Kale looked over the battlefield, his thoughts turned to the future. Earth was free. But at what cost? The war had taken so much from them. The survivors stood together, looking toward the horizon. The uncertainty of the future loomed over them, but for the first time in a long while, they were not afraid. They had survived, and they would rebuild. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Kale knew that Earth had been forever changed. Humanity had risen up from the ashes of its own destruction, and now it was no longer the underdog in the galaxy. The humans had proved their strength, their resilience, and their ability to stand against the odds. In the days that followed, the humans began the long process of rebuilding their world and their future. The galaxy, once ruled by the Council, was now open to them. They would no longer cower in the shadows, afraid of the power of the alien overlords. Instead, they would look toward the stars, not with fear, but with pride. Kale's reflection on the cost of victory was bittersweet. He had led them to this point, but he knew it had come at a price. Earth was free, but the sacrifices made would never be forgotten. The fallen soldiers, the friends, the comrades, they would live on in the hearts and minds of those who had survived. As humanity began to rebuild, Kale stood at the forefront of a new era. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's future had only just begun. The stars, once so distant and unreachable, were now within their grasp, and for the first time in millennia, humanity could look to the future with hope. They had won.